guess we got some time for questions, so if anyone has any questions or comments.
Well, which is best, Angular or React?
Come on.
Of course, React. Which is best to start to learn?
No, don't do this.
Let's vote. Keep it in mind.
I like React better. I think React is more modular, so you can apply it to the real web more easily. In Angular, you have to just change so many things to bring it to your
She just wants to start a fight, don't listen to her.
Hey, let's do a quick vote. So if you were starting a new project now, who would use React? Hands up.
But it depends so much on what kind of a project you're doing.
Front-end project. Okay. And who would use Angular? One or two, doesn't matter. Okay.
Oh dear.
All right. So yeah.
Can I use both?
All right. Cool. And that can be our sort of segue to the next talk, which is about Angular 2. Thanks, Amit.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
No. Yeah. So.
Can you hear me? No.
Yes.
I need two hands to draw diagrams on the sky, so I expected some hands-free. So, formal introduction. My name is Esfand, and I'm an addict. You too, I guess.
Hi, Esfand.
But our addiction is not to alcohol; it's to computer technology. So, maybe we should call this technologic anonymous or something like that. TA instead of AA. The symptoms of that is anytime something comes up, let's say flux, all of a sudden I lose my appetite. I get scared. What should I do on the next interview? Or what if my client asks for my opinion on flux and stuff? So there goes 5 at least episodes of Emmerdale. I have to dig into different places and see what this flux is. And at the end, this is an example. I realized that it's the same old shit that 12 years ago was invented on the server side, and everybody is using it, but it's called different things, 3 different patterns. One is command query responsibility. I'm making up, you don't have to remember. CQRS, that all it says is you have to send all the requests, commands, now they changed it to action, from one endpoint and all the queries from the other endpoint. And there goes one way, data flow. Then we have on the command side some handlers that get the commands and create events out of it and send it out for anybody who is interested, and it's called event streaming, event sourcing pattern. And then there is a event store that saves all the events, not the state of the object. And now they called it flux without even mentioning what it was. So I get a little bit better, I get my appetite back, and I can talk and write blog posts and stuff. But every once in a while, something new actually comes up. The first one I have seen for me was Angular-1, that brought up this concept of you can extend the browser HTML, in a sense, have our own tag. That was really innovation, mind-boggling. That was great. So good that all the browser vendors thought, why shouldn't we do that ourselves, put it at the browser level, and came up this concept of web components. And it became so popular that now before that, component meant 200 different things. But after that web component, everybody remembers this web component as the component, and all the frameworks started using that. Angular-2, React, Ember, Aurelia, you name it. If they don't have component, it's old-fashioned. So that was the first thing I saw that was really eye-opening. Second one was React from the Facebook that picked that component and component tree and add something really fantastic to it, which is the virtual DOM, which in a sense, it says dealing with DOM nodes and jQuery to change them and bring them to the next data state on the screen is not for programmers. Programmers have better things to do. So they pushed down DOM manipulation to actually framework level, which is great. And we just, as a programmer, write a component tree, and rest is done, creation of DOM and stuff like that, by the framework. And better than that, we are not even limited to document object model. It can be native anything. As far as we are concerned, we have the same calls and API and stuff to write our own application. So React Native and things like that started. So now everybody, all the framework, new one, picked that concept too, on top of component and component tree, including Angular-2, that they have exact same thing. But it's just a concept. Concept is we have our data, we just push it into component tree, and the framework just understand that component tree and take care of the DOM or whatever it is that gets rendered on the screen or phone or whatever. But each one of them, React and Angular and Aurelia and stuff like that, they implement that concept totally differently. There is no concept of Angular, concept of virtual DOM in Angular-2. They have the same concept. You have data, push it into component tree, and that's it. The rest is done by the framework. Maybe it's time to explain a couple of things. When I posted this idea of talk, I was under the impression that I have 1 hour. So I had 3 20 minutes, one for prerequisites to Angular, things like TypeScript or bundler, module bundler, and stuff like that. 20 minutes to go into anatomy of this Angular-2 component and component tree. And the third one was change detection, which is really important. That's the whole thing about Angular. So I had a choice which one to take for 20 minutes. I picked the most important one, that is change detection. So that means I have to merge all those other two into that, and that's why I need your help to stop me and remind me that I'm saying some buzzword that is not well known. And you need to explanation. You don't need to tweet or anything, just stop me right here. The second thing was that, let's forget about Angular 1. I think for a good marketing reason, Google picked Angular 2 instead of something else, like Aurelia did. But it causes a lot of problem for everybody. It's like when automobile came out, they could pick horse and carriage too, because they wanted whoever has horse and buggy come and buy automobile. Same difference between Angular 1 and Angular 2. On top of that, just to make Angular 1 programmers happy, they created facade, mask, or whatever that kind of emulates what Angular 1 is. But that's by itself one level of abstraction that confuses. It's good for Hello World, but beyond that, you have to know what's underneath. So my suggestion is, for anybody who wants to learn Angular 2, forget about Angular 1. Learn the concept of Angular 2, and then go back and correlate that to this or this to that. It makes it a lot easier to not to talk about abstracts like ng model or stuff like that. That doesn't exist, but they make it up just to get the programmers coming to the framework. Then the third one is, I guess that's it. So let's go to, from now on, I'm talking about specific stuff. Maybe before that, I talk about component and component tree, because those are common between everything. Component is actually right in front of us. You bring up any web page, has a top and a bottom and a left and a right and a main center. Right there is 5 components under the root. Then each one of those, let's say top, has a navigation and a logo and a few other things. So that again, that top component has this many child. There we go, it's just recursively apply this to any portion and we end up with component tree, nothing more than that. Of course, the question is how deep should we go to the level of just a paragraph or image or stuff, or somewhere higher, just bundle something in the div and call that a leaf component. It's a matter of judgment. It's somewhere in between. So it's up to us to decide. And there are a few guidelines, something like if they are by the same team, they are coming from same server, or something like that, kind of influence our decision. But beyond that, it's just that. Component tree is that. So what is component? Component is something that in all of these new frameworks, some class. I wonder, this concept of class is from object-oriented programs. I wonder if you're familiar with the concept. If anybody is familiar, doesn't need more explanation or not? Please raise your hand. Okay, so I assume that we know class. It's nothing but a bunch of, I'm sorry, I go get some water. Just drink anything.
There's plenty to drink. Ah, nice.
My mouth is dry. Okay. The component itself. That's a managed object. People who know Java or .NET or stuff like that, or dependency injection in general. Managed object is something that we don't instantiate a class. It is the framework that does new and the constructor. That's called component, essentially. When it comes to JavaScript frameworks, when the framework instantiates an object, then framework is also in charge of getting rid of it, destroy it, garbage collected at the end, and then some stuff in the middle. That init and destroy is almost two common things that all the frameworks must communicate with the author of the component to let it know that now you got started, you got instantiated, now you are going to be destroyed in case we allocate something in the init and we want to get rid of it, deallocate, resource, connection to database, something like that. So generally, managed object, they have an init and a destroy, and something in between. Those are called life cycle methods, life cycle hooks, life cycle anything. If you see life cycle, it's in React 2. That means the points that framework calls some method of the component to tell it that something happened. The most important one for Angular-2 is something init happens one time, destroy happens one time at the end. In between, many times, a method called do check. Go ahead and check, and that's all. That's all communication between Angular and us. Anything else is up to us. In terms of component. So when we write components, if you're interested in some initialization time, we implement on init method. If we are interested in destroy, we write on destroy method, and anything else. Lots of time we don't need it, so component doesn't need have any on init. So important thing here is that by this description, Angular doesn't know anything, not a jack, about what our data is. It just knows how to go and traverse that component tree and call the life cycle that now that component, you are time to do check. And beyond that, there is nothing about our data that Angular-2 knows about. Unfortunately, they don't make it very clear in their talks and stuff like that it's that way. And they start talking about immutable objects, RxJS, and which makes things muddy. Not that they are not important, actually they are, but they are our concept. It's not the framework concept. If we do immutable objects or Redux or whatever, immutable JS, or we use RxJS, or anything else. So, question is, then how can we get this calls when Angular needs a field of our object, which is a class? And do I have to a little bit explain about this object called component, or is it clear? Am I vague in saying that these calls and callbacks?
I think it's pretty clear. If people have questions, they can ask.
Okay, so please stop me. I assume that you ask me, and that's how I move forward. So, question is how it's possible that framework Angular-2 gets some data from us, because we have state in that object. The key is one of the features of object-oriented, that is getters and setters, accessor methods. When we say in an object-oriented way, person.name, it actually is not a data field. It's a getter. If we use it on the right-hand side of an equation, if we use it something on the left, like person.name equal, that is a setter. And in JavaScript, we have get name and set name as a function. So those are actually not real data that Angular is asking us. It just calls a function. Now, in the implementation of that get name, you can throw a coin and return a value, no data, just a random coin. Or we can have a field actually in the object that has name. Or we can contact some global object that is Redux and do whatever you want to do. As far as Angular is concerned, it just calls getter and setter to give us a chance to provide or get information. That's very important, and that's the key to the fact that Angular doesn't know anything about our data. Those are all methods. It called that, and that is perhaps the main feature of object-oriented, that is encapsulation. Nobody outside of this object should know about internals, because if they do, then they become dependent. And we have problem because if we change something, we break something somewhere else. So because of that, this getter and setter, the accessor methods are very important. So that was the basics of Angular component. How much time I have approximately? I'm sorry.
Maybe 5-10 minutes.
10 minutes. Okay. So now I start talking about this magic of Angular, which is change detection. How does it know that when to start calling our methods, when to start rendering, and things like that? There is one JavaScript 101 that we need to know, and second one is a library that happened to be by Angular team, and it's called Zone.js. The first one, the 101, is actually when Angular-2 started, I realized that I don't know that. I went back and found a fantastic video that explains this interworking of JavaScript engine, the virtual machine, when it comes to async, when it called back and who gets the turn and stuff like that. I have posted a fantastic video that is the classic one that explains that aspect of JavaScript. But in a nutshell, whenever from the global level we call a function, it has a call stack. It pushes, the virtual machine pushes that call to the call stack. And when that function calls another function, then again it pushes another one on top of that and hides the previous one. And the stack goes up and down depending on when a function returns, something pops out of the stack. When a function is called, virtual machine pushes in the stack. Now, it goes all the way, eventually that global level call comes back. And at that time, in JavaScript language, they call it virtual machine turn. One turn is over, it's time to another one to get the turn. And that's the time that Angular gets involved. As soon as that stack is empty, I will explain how. Angular wakes up and do its own job. I will explain what those jobs are. But in general, how Angular does it is the mystery. And that is the Zone.js, which brings me to second infrastructure things that we need to know. At least functionally, we don't need to know how it's implemented. It's very complex. It's like brain surgery on the browser to let Angular know on every single thing. It's very simple to use. but it's very complicated. It's like watch, very complex inside. You have two hands that tells us what the time is. What is Zone.js is essentially those three different kinds of asynchronous things that JavaScript provides. Those are set timeout. Second one is Ajax call, XHR. Third one is DOM events, click, press, or stuff like that, click. When any one of those happens, as a result of Zone.js, Angular-2 wakes up and says, oh, what happened? Now something is losing its turn. Now I should render. Or some DOM event happened. Oh, I have to go to, this is the mind-boggling thing. On every single event that happens, that Angular wakes up, it goes through that whole component tree. It can be thousands of nodes hierarchically. But every single click or anything else, it must go and see if that component is changed, and that component, one by one. But it's okay, you can do it. If you're not talking about Facebook application or Amazon, stuff like that. But if you have some unusual thing, it's really big tree, that is the main feature of Angular, that Angular-2, that nothing else is like it. In Angular-1, there was no way you can influence the behavior of Angular framework. It was take it or leave it. In Angular-2, it's totally different. We have a lot of control. It's just personal analogy, maybe ridiculous, but I remember this ballroom dancing, tango in Finland. Two couples can go and learn the tango steps and go on the stage and do their own job, but they don't get a trophy. They can get by. If you want to be queen or king or stuff like that, you have to know the partner's capabilities, limitations, whatever. It's exactly between us and Angular. We need to dance together in order to make things efficient. And it's very easy, actually, it's really easy to do that. It gives them all the options to, it's like we are the man, we are the leader who leads the dance, and Angular is the female, takes the commands. But we as a leader, we need to know not to act too much because we fall down. Same thing with the Angular and the framework. And that miracle happens in the, what is called change detection. The two kinds of change detection activity that Angular-2 does. One is on every single event, it wakes up and traverses the tree in a depth-first manner, every single. And then when it's time to virtual machine turn, it wakes for different kinds of thing. That different kind of thing is, it takes those change detected component tree and renders them, makes the DOM out of it. Behind the scene, it does the same thing as React. It really don't do it from scratch. It has the previous DOM tree, and it just figures out in a very efficient way how to manipulate that to make it the new DOM tree. But it gives us the impression that don't worry about the previous one. Just give us the refreshed component Angular takes care of rendering it. And also, it doesn't have to be DOM. It can be anything. That Angular, it's replaceable in Angular. We can remove that DOM manipulation, DOM handler, DOM renderer, and put some native script or React Native or something else. They actually work on both of those. So let's talk about this interaction between us and the Angular when it's time to change detection and rendering. I'm almost about the end of time.
Yeah, a couple more minutes is fine.
Okay. At the rendering time, I said that there is a do check lifecycle method that it calls, but that's difficult for us to implement that. And instead of that, out of the box, Angular-2 provides an implementation for that. That is smart enough to implement do check, no matter what your component is, and take care of what is changed, what is not changed. And that is the default do check implementation provided by Angular-2. Again, this is another thing that they don't make it clear that we have a do check only as a lifecycle, but a default implementation of do check comes with Angular out of the box. And that one calls some other method that is called onChange. So when it calls onChange, it just lets us know that I took care of this change. I know the previous one, I know the current one. I flagged that this is dirty, this component, and the rest is done by them. So that they call it strategy for change detection. The default strategy, the normal strategy is go ahead and do depth first, and every single event traverse this component tree and take care of the changes. The default one is actually smart. If we can set a decorator metadata that says, I want uncheck strategy. When we do that, then it doesn't go blindly traverse the whole component tree. Instead, it calls onChange lifecycle method, kind of dummy lifecycle method, and let us do our stuff. At that point, then it's us to do some smart thing, to make it possible for Angular not to traverse that sub 1,000 children and descendants that we have. Just skip it because we don't have any change. Happen at root level, we may not have any change on the new one. So no need for Angular to go through all that scanning on every single event. So that's the main thing that we need to know good in order to write efficient programs. I think I can defer the rest for some other time. Maybe I should mention that I knew this is going to happen. I'll be halfway. So I set up a YouTube, not specific for here, a YouTube channel that is kind of cooperative learning school class. The idea is to have limited number of people every hangout on air meetings, and one of us become responsible for explaining the theme of that session. Go ahead and go study change detection and then come over there and explain it to other people who are maximum 10 can be there, but we can record it for anybody for later that can't attend. So the idea is that leader, that explainer, speaker, responsible to learn it himself, and then come and explain to others and answer questions. We may get lucky to get some good speakers, not like me, somebody who is actually maybe member of Angular team, because it's just virtual. They can be there. We have a weekly plan to have every Wednesday, 8 at night, 1 hour, to have one session beforehand. We explain what is it that they're going to talk, and I will try, and a few other friends we have in Angular Meetup, to find some good speaker or some volunteer from us. If nobody else was there, I'll take responsibility to go and study and come and do my best. So you're welcome to become a subscriber to that channel and see, it's experimental, see how far we can get it. The idea is lots of people, they can't afford to go to conferences and paid classes and stuff like that, unless they are employee of some enterprise. And even them, they go Las Vegas to have fun, not to learn. So somewhere we have to learn. And this, I thought, may be a good way to help each other for free to learn. And then leave some recorded session, if that is worthy. Otherwise, you just scratch it and do it again. The idea is to have question and answer. You're welcome to be there.
So yeah, please post the link to Facebook and Twitter, and we'll retweet it to the HelsinkiJS account.
Sure, sure. Or I can put on the subject of the
talk, yeah, and we'll tweet that out. That's perfect.
Yes,
great.
Do that.
Any
question?
Any questions or comments?
Did you about those what do you call it, change?
There is noise background. I can't hear anything. Can you please come here and say?
Change detection strategies. Can you make kind of own strategies on that in Angular-2?
Can you implement your own change detection strategy?
Change to strategy. Oh, I see. The default strategy is we have no control and Angular does anything. The strategy on change means leave everything to us. So that's the meaning of we can do anything we want. There are two main ways. That is good way, the recommended way is using immutable application state, just one object, and use Redux or something, or immutable object. The other good way is to use RxJS, observable, to do that based on subscription.
Perfect, thanks. All right, hey, let's have a 10-minute break and we'll continue at 22. All right? So feel free to get some more beer from the fridge or pizza. The pizza is in the kitchen. Paper somewhere.
Yeah, guys, let's just take 5 minutes. You've got your own.
Pistän sinne reunaan. Tuossa on joku kumipohja, ei liukaa. Tai kai liukaa.